Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning in for this Sew Over It Eve dress sew with me. We are starting out today with video 1. We're going to be talking about supplies and pattern adjustments. So let's get started. So let me just say, keep in mind, I am not an expert. I consider myself an advanced beginner, not quite intermediate sewer, even though I grew up sewing and whatnot, but really into this garment making and making adjustments and things is fairly new to me. So bear with me, I'm still learning. So if you have other tips or tricks you'd like to share, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. But let's get started. Our video number 1, we're going to talk, like I said, we're going to talk about supplies and pattern adjustments. So first things first, let's grab our pattern, right? So hopefully you have the Sew Over It Eve dress pattern already, or you will soon be getting it. And then let's also talk about fabric. Make sure you have your fabric. So let me go ahead and show you the fabric that I will be using, which you would have seen this in a haul. I am using this beautiful print I got from Cali Fabrics. I'll link in the iCards above where I got this from. And so you can see that this is the rayon Cali. So very drapey, very nice. Also, don't forget your thread. Let me move this out the way so you can see everything. Don't forget your thread. For me, I will be using this black Gutermann thread. And if you do decide to overlock, go ahead and get your overlock thread. Make sure that's in place. Make sure you have your stay tape. I use the Sew Keys by Emma Seabrook, the woven stay tape. I actually love it. I have their knit stay tape as well. I've had it for years. Make sure you also have your bias binding. I will be using black. I was thinking about creating my own bias binding for this, but I think just so I'm not doing too much in the video, I decided I'll just stick with pre-made bias binding tape. If you find that you will need to make adjustments, get your Post-it note out. Make sure you have your pins. Make sure you have your friction pins or other marking tools. It could be markers. Make sure you have, if you have your washable markers, make sure you have those. And any highlighters, any other thing that you might use as a marking tool. Get your tracing paper, all of that. And so next we will be looking at the pattern. Okay, so if you have your pattern, we are doing version 1, which is the flutter sleeve, and it has kind of that high-low going on. So that is what version we will be doing in this video. So let's go ahead and open up the pattern. Make sure that you go over all of their tips. There's quite a few good tips in here. Make sure you go over those. Make sure you pay attention to the seam allowance, whether it's in centimeters or inches. That pertains to you, and make sure that you are following those. I also suggest make sure you go through the glossary. Let's see if I can get this to focus. Okay, go through your glossary. We've already talked about the stay tape, gathering, and what that is as well. Also, pay attention to the layout plan. So my suggestion is follow whatever works best for your fabric allocation. So save your fabric and pay attention to print or design on your fabric. My fabric, while it has a design on it, is fairly fluid, so I don't have to worry about any pattern matching or anything like that. So make sure that you are paying attention to the layout plan. And also, as we get into the sewing piece, the stay tape portion. Now, I did this for the first time I made the dress, and we'll do this the second time. I did not follow this at all. I I have rolls of the stay tape, so I just went and just grabbed the whole roll and just did what I needed to do with it. I didn't necessarily do any measuring, but if you feel the need to, go ahead and make sure that you take whatever measurements you need to for the stay tape. And also, because the pattern doesn't call for bias binding, but I use bias binding, and I use the stay tape and bias binding. So you can pretty much figure out, if you decide to do bias binding as well, whatever the length pieces you need, make sure you have enough yardage of your bias binding to go around the different pieces as indicated here on the stay tape chart. And so now this is where you begin to do some sewing, but first we must make our adjustments. So in this next clip, I will share with you how I made my adjustments and what any new adjustments I plan on doing this second time around. Okay, so here is the back of the pattern. You will need to make sure that you take your bust, waist, and hip measurements. And as you can see, here's the bust, waist, and hip measurements, and then see where you fit in the measurement chart. And for me, I knew I was going to have to go with the highest, which is the 20. Here are my measurements, just so you can see. Let me see if I can put that there. So my bust is 51, and I did this back in July. And so not much has changed with mine. I'm not going to change any of my measurements for this one. And the waist, my waist is 48. And hip is 58. So, and these are the measurements from the back of the pattern. And then, so then I know what my difference is and divide each one by 4. And this lets me know how much I need to adjust or increase the pattern by. And so once you've taken your measurements, then you have your pattern pieces. And so I'm just showing the front bodice piece here. So what I do is I trace off all indie pattern patterns, as you can see here, indicated by the red line. And at this time I did not have my friction pen, so I just used my washable marker. So then once I overlay the tracing paper, I can see the line through there. And so what I got was this. So hopefully you can see that. I traced the grain line, what piece it is, how many pieces I need to cut out. And because I needed to make this 1.5 inch adjustment for the bust and 2.5 for the waist, what I did for the bodice is I did a pivot where, let's see here, let me show you. So I'm following the Nancy Zieman pivot and slide technique. This is a miniature top, so this is the bodice. And so because I needed to go out here, and I'm trying to look through here, 1 1/2 inches, I cut out the bodice piece, laid it on top of some paper, and then I pivoted the pattern piece from the points, because you have to put your pin where these dots are here. Let me see. Oh good, you can see the 5/8 inch from the top. You put a pin, stick a pin there, and then 5/8 of an inch from here you put a pin, and this is how that will look. So essentially you have your pattern piece, and again this is a miniature, and we know from my measurement for the bust I needed to extend it out 1.5 inches. And so I'll leave a link to the Sewing with Nancy videos so you can see how she did it, but this is essentially how I made the adjustment for the bust and then for the bottom. And I did the pivot and slide for this particular pattern because it's an easy pattern. I don't have to worry about darts or anything like that. So the pivot and slide worked perfect for this. So essentially you lay the pattern down after you've traced it out and have everything cut out. At least that's how I did it. Again, you could do it differently in whatever order makes sense to you. And so then you stick a pin in those points here. And so let's just pretend this is 1.5 inches out. So once I've already traced the entire pattern, I would just pivot this at 1.5 inch, right? Put my pin back in the spot and then retrace this area. And once I do that, this is how it will look. You see that green line? That's now my new pattern line that I will cut out. And that was the adjustment that was made here through the arm and all the way down the side. And so that is what I did for my pattern piece and why it's here. And then everything, of course, evens back up at the bottom. And again, I will leave the link below to the pivot and slide videos so you can see for yourself. And so this is how I made the adjustment. Again, it's simple for this particular pattern. When you have darts and things, there's a little bit, I'm sure, just a little bit more you will need to consider. But for something that has no darts, it just has gathering at the top, which I'll talk about in the future video. I will not do the gathering. I will do a pleat this time, and I'll show how I did that. But you will do this same thing if you preserve your patterns this way. Trace out all of your pattern pieces. Make sure you take your adjustments. Go ahead and make whatever adjustment to your pattern piece that you need to do. Cut out. You know, I use shipping paper for this piece, tracing paper for this piece. I'll link that video above to the tools that I use. And then you have your new pattern piece. And so that is it. That is it. If there are any questions, please leave them below and I will answer them. So I hope that helps, and we will see you in the next video. The next video, we will be talking about construction. That's where we'll begin all of our construction, and I will explain to you the changes I am making along the way, like doing the pleat instead of gathering at the yoke, and using the bias tape as well. So that is that, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in video number 2, which will be up on Sunday. Have a blessed week.